celebrate. And before I launch on this, I just really feel the Lord's presence and His hand on this idea that we talked about during communion, that God's waiting for us to come to the altar. That is the place of healing, of reconciliation, of coming to Him. It's just the concept and the idea of coming to Him. That I know for me personally, that it's easy to get into a kind of a separatist mindset that I'm doing my life and God's kind of there but not there. And God is really wanting to impress upon us that He wants to be involved in the day-to-day, in the nitty-gritty, in the everything that we do, and to keep Him or us to be coming to the altar, is to keep coming back to Him in our times of need, in our good times, of continually having that sense of awareness, and especially when things go south a little bit, when things get hard. And, you know, if you put two people in a room, things are going to get hard at times. And so God wants to be there in the midst of those struggles and our help, and for us to continually be reaching out to Him, or to have that picture of continually coming to the altar, continually coming to His presence. Why do we celebrate? This week we're going to celebrate the 4th of July. Why do we do any celebration? Why do we celebrate communion? Why do we celebrate Christmas or Easter or birthdays or any number of the holidays that we go through? Why do we celebrate? I want to start by sharing this scripture in Isaiah 60, verses 1 through 4. It says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and deep darkness the people. But the Lord will arise over you, and His glory will be seen upon you. The Gentiles shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift your eyes all around and see. They all gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughters shall be nursed at your side." Arise, shine. Arise. Get moving. Get up. Come to the Lord. Arise, shine. For when he talks about light, now this is a prophecy. Isaiah is prophesying a future time, a future event. He's talking about the Messiah. He's talking about Jesus coming. And he's saying, arise, for your light has come. Jesus has come. Light means revelation. It's to lighten the way, to lighten the path, to give light to direction. So he says, your light has come, your revelation has come. Jesus was the express image of the Father. He was the revelation of who God was. And he's saying, arise, come, for the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. The glory of God has come to you. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth. What he's talking about? Blindness, darkness. When you're dark, you can't see. You don't know which way to go. When you're in a lighted room and the lights go off suddenly and it gets pitch dark, you're blind. You can't see anything. You can't see any direction. And it takes a while for your eyes to adjust. This is talking about no divine revelation. Darkness shall cover the earth. No revelation. No direction. And deep darkness the people. But the Lord will arise over you, and His glory will be seen upon you. The Gentiles shall come to your light. What's he prophesying? He's prophesying that there's going to come a time when the Gentiles, the non-Jews, anybody that was not a Jew, was considered a Gentile. He says, the Gentiles are going to come to light. Now we know that the Jews rejected Jesus, and through Peter and the Apostle Paul, the message of Jesus Christ went out to the rest of the world. It went to the Gentiles. Now, what was the message? What was What was the revelation that came? Why did Jesus come? One, Jesus came to give revelation, to show us the way, to show us how life was meant to be. He came to give us direction, to show us how to live, to open our eyes that we would see, to bring us freedom and liberty. That Jesus died to break the yoke of sin. Why do we celebrate communion? It's to remember. It's to think back, but not just nostalgically, not just, oh yes, I remember that Jesus. Why do we celebrate Christmas? Why do we celebrate Easter? It's more than just an event. But we can reduce it to an event. Yes, Jesus came. Yes, Jesus died. And we leave it there. But there's a much bigger story behind those events. That Jesus came for a purpose. The reason why we celebrate Christmas, it's the picture of God coming to us. He didn't stay aloof, afar off, somewhere far away, but He came to us in the midst of our lostness. He came to bring light. So when we think about Christmas, hopefully we think it's more than just an evergreen tree with lights and ornaments and presents, and we get stuff. And we can take it a step further and say, well, we have this cute little nativity we set up, and yes, remember that Jesus came. But why did He come? The reason why we have these events that cause us to remember back is to remember why they came. Why did He come? He came to be with us. He came to give us a picture of God. So we rejoice and we celebrate not just the event, but the reasons why. And it forces us to remember, because we're all guilty of just Christmas, New Year, Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day. And we just go, we just cycle, we just get into the routines of life and the patterns of life. And we stop remembering why. We stop remembering the how comes. And so we have these holidays, these times of remembering, of thinking back, of reminding ourselves why it's important. Why do we celebrate it? Not just the fact that we celebrate, but why do we celebrate? Why do we celebrate Easter? Well, Jesus died, put in a tomb, third day rose again, yee-haw. But it's so much more than that. The very fact that He triumphed over death, that He rose victorious. There is so much. Look, if the resurrection didn't happen, we have no reason to be here today. Paul said we are a people most miserable. If there is no resurrection, resurrection is the very thing that gives us life. So when we celebrate Easter, it's just not bunnies and Easter eggs and candy and baskets. It's just not death, hell, and resurrection. It's that Jesus came to give us life. He died for our sins. In Galatians it says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free. I am no longer a slave to fear." Why? Because I'm a child of God. Because God has triumphed victoriously. So the next time you say, well, I'd like to do that, but I'm kind of afraid. Why? You're no longer a slave to fear. Fear doesn't have to own us. Fear doesn't have to control us. Because Jesus, the very reason why we celebrate Easter is because we celebrate the fact that He has set us free from sin. That there's nothing that can hold us back. That's why we celebrate. That's why we get excited. Well, at least I am. Come on. It's why we remember. It's why we celebrate. It's remembering the details. So in the midst of our struggles, in the midst of what's going on in our lives, we think back, we remember what Jesus did, and it gives us a hope. It helps us turn our frown upside down. Now, in remembering what Jesus did and remembering why we celebrate, there's a second component that we also have to remember. Paul said it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. He says, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run?" We're all running a race. We're all running the race of life. But if you're running a physical race, a track meet, only one receives the prize. But he says, run in such a way that you may obtain the prize. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate, is moderation in all things. In other words, if you're trying to train to run a race, you're not stuffing yourself with cookies and cakes and candy and ice cream. And he said you got to have a balanced diet. You got to be temperate in all things. Now, it's not that you can't have it, but you just don't go gorge yourself. So he said, or if you do, chances of winning the race isn't very good. But he said, you're temperate in all things. Now, they do it to attain a perishable crown, a prize, a gold medal. But we, for an imperishable crown, we're running the race to receive a crown that will not go away, a prize that will not go away. Therefore, I run thus, not with uncertainty. He doesn't run aimlessly. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air. He's not shadow boxing. He's training. He's actually fighting someone. Okay? Now listen to this. I'm going to lose you all on this one. But I discipline my body and bring it under subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. What is he saying? He's saying this thing that Jesus has given us, this liberty that Jesus has given us, that we're all running this race of life. We're all running to obtain a prize. And Jesus has died to set us free. But that freedom is not a freedom that we can just do whatever we want, live any old way we want. Paul says, I'm running a race. I'm running to obtain a prize. What? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Paul was running specifically to carry out the freedom that Jesus has called us to. What is that freedom? The freedom is to be all that God called us to be. He has broke the power of sin in our lives, that we can now, we're not bound by the fleshly desires. Now look, my flesh has some desires. I can tell you there's certain parts of the day that I want chocolate. I want ice cream, especially when it's 102 and you're sitting outside. Okay? My flesh has desires. About 2 o'clock, my flesh wants a nap. This body has desires. Sometimes those desires are unhealthy. Sometimes I have a desire. I'm just going to confess this to you all, and don't try not to throw stones, because he without sin cast the first stone. Okay? But sometimes I have a desire to lie. I know, it drives me nuts. It's like, the truth is okay. Why do I have to lie? But there's something inside of me that wants to hide things. Now, what is Paul saying? Paul's saying, Jesus has set me free from that. But I have to discipline myself not to do those things. Because there's still something inside of me that wants to do those things. That freedom, just because we have freedom, doesn't mean now that I can just give in to anything I want to do. That God has called us to specific purposes. It's hard to be the light of the world when I'm rolling in the mud. It's hard for God to shine His light through me if I keep giving in to some of my fleshly desires that want to lie, cheat, and steal. It will discredit the light that is in me. That if I allow anger to control me, some of the fleshly things, bad attitudes, bitterness, anger, if I allow those things to control me, it distracts from the freedom that Christ came to bring me. That I have to cooperate with what God is doing in me. Now, if I continually to give myself to those fleshly desires, to those things, am I becoming more free or more bound? You become more bound. And even though Jesus died to set me free, I'm becoming more bound and more controlled by those very things that He has set me free from. So I have to work and cooperate and remember why Jesus died. Why do we celebrate communion? It's to once again remind us that His body was broken so that I don't have to receive the punishment that He did. That Jesus' blood was spilled, ushering in a new covenant, that I can come back to the Father at any time, in any struggle, at any point, that when I am struggling or I'm tempted. Just recently, I took a little trip. And in that trip, I had stopped at many places and saw old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. And in fact, I saw, most of you know, Aaron and Rhonda Fitzgerald in Tennessee. I stopped and visited with them. And in the midst of our conversation, again, this must be Confession Sunday or something, because communion or... But I want you to see the practical side of this. Is I said something really stupid. It was one of those things that could be interpreted, okay, was that a slam or was that a compliment? And I'm sure none of you have ever done that. But after I left and I thought about it, I thought, oh man, Tom, what were you thinking? How could you even say something so stupid? I mean, and it just kind of ate at me. Now, it wasn't anything that was, it's not like I spilled anger and venom all over them, but I just said something that just, God, is this, are you convicting me of this, or is this just whatever? But and it just rolled around for about a month. And finally, I had a dream about it. And I thought, okay, first thing in the morning, I called them and I said, look, I don't know how, I just want to apologize right now. I'm sorry, I don't even know if you remember this or if it bothered you, but it's been bothering me, so I just need to get the air clear. And they was like, what? What did you say? I don't remember that. That was Rhonda. Oh, sure, no problem, don't worry about it. But there are times in our lives when we do stuff. We say the wrong thing, we get angry, relationships, turmoil. Look, Jesus came to set us free. The best thing to do is just apologize, get over it, move on. But that's why we can come to the altar. We can come and receive that. We have to cooperate with what Jesus has done. Now, what if that had offended them? And they were going around carrying an offense. And I never bothered to listen to the inner voice inside of me. Then the next time I said, hey, I'm coming through Tennessee, they would say, just keep on going. Got to make it right. But why do we celebrate these things? Why do we remember? It's because we need to remember the whys of why we do it, of what happened. Now, all of that to say, we are coming up on a holiday this week, the 4th of July. Why do we celebrate? Why do we celebrate the 4th of July? Do what? We celebrate the 4th of July because Christ prayed for our...
No, the price that was...
Oh, the price that was... I thought you said price, I heard Christ.
Oh.
So, the price that was paid for our liberty. Why do we celebrate it? Because there was a cost. But how much of our culture, and even sometimes our thinking, what do we associate with the 4th of July? Family, picnic, fireworks, barbecue, hot dogs, hamburgers, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Oh, baseball and Chevrolet. Okay? But why we say, look, in America, we are losing the very idea of why America was created. We are losing, and especially in a younger culture, the very thing, what is it? Christ came to set us free. Freedom is not free, but it's not the freedom to do whatever I want. And you see in America, America was created to give us liberty, to give us freedom. And what it is slowly becoming is a freedom to do whatever I want to do. And if we're not careful, if we don't remember the why of the 4th of July, we will lose it. We will lose the reason why this country was founded. Let me read you the preamble to the Constitution. It says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility," that means living at home, peace at home, "provide for the common defense," defending us against foreign and domestic, "promote the general welfare of its people, and secure the blessings of liberty." The blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, that is, the future generations. Do obtain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. The reason why the Constitution was put into place was to defend these things, to establish these principles, to establish the blessings of liberty, freedom. What was the freedom that they were seeking to establish? Now see, America was an idea. The concept of America and the government had been tried in small doses, but never on the grand scale that they were attempting to establish, our founding fathers were attempting to establish here in the United States. What were they seeking to establish? Now this is critical to our understanding. They were seeking to establish a people that would have freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from tyranny. Freedom from a monarchy. What was tyranny? Tyranny was a dictator, was a despot who ruled everything. And if he didn't like you, he could look at you and said, "Off with their head." That they had no. Let me ask you, does North Korea have freedoms? Not at all. And that's exactly what America was founded to get away from. Was a dictator that controlled everything, that made sure he was taken care of. The other thing that it moved away from was the monarchy, the king, which is again what? A kingship passed down from generation to generation to generation within that same family. And you had the peasants, and you had the rich, or there's another term for it. Nobility, the royals. Okay? America was established to say we're all important. We're all free to pursue the things that make for a better country, to pursue our vision of happiness. That's why this melting pot, America became this melting pot that people, it's okay if you believe a different way. It's okay if you're from a different nationality. We're not telling you to become American and give up your nationality. Come here, we can celebrate your nationality, but we're here for a common cause, and that is for the betterment of the country. The founding fathers knew it could only work with self-government. The people governing themselves. Paul said, "This liberty that has been given to me, I must discipline my body to bring myself into subjection to the liberties in which God gave us." It's the same principle. I believe that America was in God's heart, was God's idea, and it was a picture of what the Christian life is supposed to look like. America has been blessed by God for 200 years. The last 40, we're hanging on the edge. But for 200 years, this was the most blessed country in all the world. Because why? We sought to honor God. Our founding fathers prayed and sought divine. But when they put in the clause, freedom of religion, it was to protect a government from dictating what kind of religion the people served. In other words, you could serve whatever God, however you saw. It wasn't necessarily a Christian version. They had the concept of you serve whatever God you serve. The government just can't inflict its own version of religion on the people. So this whole idea of separation of church and state is a lie. It was the only truth there is that they did not want the government inflicting upon the church what it was to believe. But the church could inflict on the government a moral standard of how it should behave. And the founding fathers knew in order for this country to succeed, it would have to be a self-governing people. And they knew that people that serve God, a God, have a much higher moral standard than those that don't. Because what were they guarding against? They were guarding against the very things that we see happening today. People in power want to stay in power, and people with power become corrupt. And in order for this government to continue to work, for the United States of America to continue to thrive, it knew that the best way for it to survive was to have religion in its people, because it would keep in check the vices that destroy us. And we see, since the 1960s, we have walked away from God. And what do we see? We see a moral decline in morals and values that will eventually destroy this country. Why do we celebrate? Why did they die? Why did they gave their life for an idea that was so much bigger than themselves. And people have paid a price for that freedom. Look, there is absolutely no way the colony should have defeated the British, should have defeated Great Britain. They were outgunned, outmanned, outshipped. They were out-resourced. And yet they won. And they won because they kept coming back to God, declaring days of fasting, days of humility and prayer, seeking God for His divine protection. And this country was on a bubble for quite a few years. Would it succeed? Would it not? The War of 1812. But we have persevered. So when we celebrate the 4th of July, we're celebrating the freedoms that were established by our founding fathers. A freedom to worship, a freedom to believe how you want to believe. But at the same time, a freedom that does not trample the rights of others. That there must be a form of self-government. There must be a form of people looking out for people. Why did they put into the government, put into it a checks and balance system?